Welcome to the Bettendorf Public Library's Take-Home Workshop. For this workshop, we're going to be doing this botanical embroidery. You're going to learn 3 different stitches and how to finish off the back. So let's get started. In your kit, you will find an 8x8 square of muslin. That's what we'll be stitching on today. You'll have a 4-inch embroidery hoop. You'll have a bag with 3 colors of embroidery floss. Now, a word about your floss. So this is DMC 6-strand embroidery floss. If you're not familiar, if you haven't worked with embroidery floss, this is how it comes. There is a number code on there. If you're ever working from a pattern, say that you might get from a library book, they will have probably DMC numbers included in the pattern. The 2 most commonly used forms of embroidery floss are DMC and Anchor, and in our area I find that DMC is the easiest to get. So it comes in skeins like this with that number code. What you have is half of a skein of each of these 3 colors. So you'll have a yellow, a blue, and a green. Your shades of these colors in your kit might be different, but it's a yellow, blue, and a green. Then of course you'll have the pattern that we will use to trace, and you'll have a little tube like this that contains our needle, and all you have to do is snip off one end and that needle will slide right out. Now a word about our needles. These are embroidery needles. So an embroidery needle is different than a hand sewing. It's still sharp, usually not necessarily super sharp, so not as sharp as a hand sewing needle, but sharp enough that, again, it will draw blood, I can tell you from experience. But they have the big thing is that they have a larger eye. I don't know how well you can see that. And that makes it easier to get the strands threaded through there. We are going to be using a full 6 strands. Embroidery floss comes 6 strands twisted together. And for some projects, you'll use 1, and for some, you'll use all 6. I'm going to be using all 6 today because I want that very full coverage. But you can always separate the strands and just use as many as you'd like. What you'll need to supply is a pencil to transfer your pattern and a pair of scissors, and that's all you'll need. Our first step is transferring the pattern, and to do that we're going to use a built-in light box that you have in your home, which is your window. Now there are different ways of transferring patterns. You can use special transfer paper. You could just freehand it, but we're going to basically trace this pattern. So I've taped our pattern to the window, and we're only going to be transferring this part, this outer ring. We don't need, that's just an indicator of where your edges are. So we're going to just tape our fabric over the pattern. Centering the pattern on the fabric, and then just using a regular pencil. Although if you do have a mechanical pencil, that works nicely because it has such a sharp tip usually. Then we're just going to hold that flat and we're just going to draw where the design is. We're just going to get all those little things, all the leaves and all the dots. And you don't have to worry about the pencil marks, because as you stitch, those will get covered up. And then when you're all done, if you want to take if there are any bits that you didn't cover, you can erase them or you can wash it. But just a light pencil mark. All the way around will transfer your pattern. After transferring your pattern, we're going to mount it in the hoop. And to do that, you just unscrew the top here and slide that inner ring out. Lay your pattern down. And I like to have it centered as I'm stitching, but if it's not centered, that's fine because you can always take it apart and adjust it later. And then we're going to lay the top part over there. Pull these edges as tight as you can, and then tighten that screw back up on the top. If you need to, you can turn it over, pull those sides in a little bit. I gave you extra room around the side. Some of that will get trimmed off later, but it's kind of nice to have it now to help you get that tight in there. Now our embroidery has 3 stitches, and I'm going to show you on our pattern because I'm not sure my pencil marks are dark enough for you to see. We have these little flowers, and the leaves are made of the same stitch. It's called a lazy daisy stitch, and because it is used quite often to make this kind of daisy style flower. So we're using it in sets of 2 or 1 for leaves, and then in our flowers you're using it in sets of 5. Depending on the size of your stitches, you can add more, you can do fewer, it's entirely up to you. The stems of these leaf sections are done in a back stitch. So that's just a straight stitch that will show you that curves nicely and is used often for stems. Then all these little dots, and while you can't see it here, the centers of your flowers are going to be French knots. When I was young and did some embroidery, I always had a problem with French knots, and now I can't figure out why, because they are not difficult at all. So if you've talked to people who embroider who said the French knots are tricky, don't listen to them, because I think they're wrong. We'll give it a try today. So that's 3 basic stitches: the lazy daisy, the back stitch, and the French knot. And those are the 3 we're going to be learning today. We're going to start with the green thread, and I cut a piece about 18 inches long. You don't want to cut too long of a piece, or you will, it tangles and it knots as you stitch. This is why, as we thread our needle, you'll see why we use the larger eye. Our DMC, our thread starts to split, so I like to just get a little bit of water and run my fingers over it, and the water will help them stick together, and it kind of flattens them out, and it makes it a lot easier to thread a needle. There are a couple different ways of securing your thread in embroidery, and we're just going to do a very simple one, which is we're going to knot the end, and we'll do what's called a quilter's knot. So I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to lay the tail over and then wrap it around a few times, not too tight, and then holding both threads as they come off, just going to pull that needle through so that you're pulling the thread through all those loops that you made around the needle. Oh, that just shot on there. And you're going to end up with a nice little knot at the end, big enough that it won't pull through. And then you can trim the end off a little bit. I wouldn't trim it too close to the knot, because if you do that, then sometimes your knots can come undone. For the stems, we're going to be using a back stitch. To do a back stitch, you start at the end of your stem, come up, go back down about a stitch worth. In our case, we're doing them about 1/8 of an inch. Then we're going to come back up again a stitch worth away. And we're going to go down, we're going to go back and go down where the previous stitch ended. Because we're going back, that's why they call it the back stitch. And we're going to continue along those lines. So we're going to go up a stitch length away from the end of the previous stitch and back down at the end of the previous stitch. So that's our back stitch. We're going to be doing just the stems and back stitch. And once we have all of our stems done, then we'll go ahead and do the leaves. Now that we've stitched our back stitch all the way around on all of our stems, let's take a look at the back and see what I did there. So we have a messy little knot here. Partway through, I ran out of thread. So I went ahead and I just knotted it and cut it off. Again, left a little bit so that you're not cutting too close to the knot. Then I did a new knot and I started. But this is where I started stitching all together. So I started here, I did my back stitch, and then I just jumped over to the next section of stem. Sometimes you're not going to want to do that, but for this pattern, it's not so visible from the back that it's very noticeable, so that works just fine. So now that I'm all done, I knot it off. I'll knot off here at the back again. So I'm just going to take that down as close to the fabric as I can get it and knot off. And then I'm going to trim and leave a little bit of a tail. And so that's our stems using the back stitch. Those are done, and now we can go ahead and move on and put our leaves in. So our leaves are done using the lazy daisy stitch. So what a lazy daisy stitch is you're going to be coming up from behind at the base of the leaf, pulling it all the way through. Then you're going to go down, not necessarily in or close to that same hole, but you don't want to pull your thread all the way through. Now you're going to come up at the tip of your leaf and you're going to run your needle through that loop that you had from the base. And so you'll have this loop that comes up from the stem. Then you're going to keep that in place by going back down again and holding that loop in place. And that's your lazy daisy stitch. So we are going to keep doing that for all of our leaves. Come up in the right space. We're going to come up, go down in pretty much the same spot, very close to it. Make sure you leave a loop. I like to stick my thumb in there so that it holds on. Come back up at the tip of the leaf. Run your needle through that loop. And then go back down again to hold that into place. So we're going to keep doing those in the green for the leaves on all these stems. So we have 3 sets of 2 on each stem and then 1 leaf at the tip. Then I'm going to switch to our yellow, and that's going to be how I do the flowers. Using the lazy daisy stitch, I finished all of my leaves all the way around, and I've done most of my flowers, but I left 2 here. So let me show you how I used that same lazy daisy stitch to do flowers. I have my knotted thread. I'm going to come up in the center and go down at the same place or very near to it, but I'm going to hold on to that loop with my thumb, just like I did before. Then I'm going to come up at the tip of the petal, go through the loop, and back down again to anchor that petal into place. I'm going to continue doing that 5 times for each flower. And what I like to do is I like to do like the top petal, and then the lower left petal, And then the lower right petal. And then the upper left and upper right. And for me, that's just an easier way to make sure that my petals are easier spaced. Obviously, you can do them in any order that you want, whatever works for you. Now that we've finished all of our flowers, you see we've used this lazy daisy stitch 5 times for each flower. It's time to put in our French knots. Our French knots show on our pattern wherever these little dots are, and then they're hard to see, but there's a dot at the center of each flower. So we'll put a blue dot at the center of each flower, and then a few others just kind of randomly scattered about. So once again, I have my needle threaded, this time with our blue thread. Threaded and knotted. We're going to come up from behind. We're going to wrap the thread around the needle twice and go back down at or right next to the same place where we came up. Now, in order to make a nice taut French knot, what you want to do is you need to hold on to this part. If you let that go too soon, it's going to be a loose French knot, and that's not what we want. So we hold on to it as far as we can, so it gets right down to it. And it's just basically making another little knot on top of your fabric. To do that for the center of your flower, we're going to come up right in the middle of our flower. It's a little trickier there because there's so many threads going through there. Wrap it twice and go, oops, my wraps came off. Wrap it twice and go back down the same spot. Hold that in tight, pull the other one through. And you have a nice little knot right in the center of your flower. So we're going to continue making these little French knots, not only in the centers of our flowers, but also just a few randomly throughout, and bring a little bit more contrast, a little of this lovely blue to the party. We've completed our stitching, and it looks actually quite lovely, doesn't it? As you can see, your stitching will have covered up all of the pencil marks, so we don't have to worry about those showing anymore. But it's gotten a little loose in the hoop as you've pulled on it, and mine, I think, is a little bit off center. So I'm just going to loosen this up a little bit. It's really tight. And just pull it all around. And tighten that up and pull it so that as I tighten it up, I also center it in the frame. And once it's the way I like it, I'm going to tighten this up again, and I'm going to tighten it as tight as I can get it to go. So now to finish it off, you have a couple options. You could just trim the fabric right here at the hoop. But that doesn't give you much leeway, it doesn't hold on to it as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors and we're going to trim around the edges a little bit so that it's circular. And this does not have to be super duper tidy. And then we're going to take some more floss, fairly long piece this time, and we're just going to do a running stitch around the edges here to gather all of that extra fabric in. So we have our needle knotted and threaded. We're just going to bring it up from behind. So I've got a knot there. There we go. And we're just going to do a running stitch. So top and bottom, pulling it as we go. And you'll see it just gathers it all up and brings it around to the back like that. This is going to make your back a little tidier. It's going to sort of hide, depending on how much fabric you had left, it's going to hide some of the back of your stitching. But more importantly, it's going to help hold that fabric tight in the frame. Bamboo, which is what these frames are, is pretty pliable, and as they get hot, as they get cold, as they get damp from humidity, they're going to change size. They're going to get bigger, they're going to get smaller, things will shift. So this will just keep your fabric centered in the frame. Right back around where you started. Pull that taut and then just knot it like we've been doing. Do it twice, make sure it's a nice big knot so it doesn't slip through there. And leave a little tail. So that holds that in place. And there you have it. If you want, you could decorate it further. You could put a little ribbon around the sides. You could paint the hoop. You could cover the back with another piece of fabric or felt or craft foam or something like that if you want to. But this is also just the way it is. It's ready to be hung up. I hope you enjoyed this take-home workshop, and I hope you will share what you've made with us. You can do that on Facebook and Instagram or Twitter. We're to be found on all of those platforms, and we'd love to see what you've done. Happy embroidering!